My hat is like a shark's fin. Deep as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Deep as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Yeah, as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Deep as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Deep as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Deep as blue as my hat is like a shark's fin. Man-made terror, 100 jaws of death. Battle cross my depths, I'll pause your breath.
What is up, people? This is the Shark Attack. I am Sean Williams. We got TLC, of course, this weekend. Final battle took place yesterday, but we got a lot to get done, a lot to talk about, and I'm going to start the order off with a little differently tonight. So first and foremost, here's my mic drop of the week.
Let the battle commence!
One thing I got to give credit where credit's due with Monday Night Raw. They had a pretty solid opener, and it involved, of all people, the current Intercontinental Champion, Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins called out Baron Corbin and blamed Corbin for why Raw has basically sucked out loud the last couple weeks. And you know, with everything that Seth Rollins said, like putting a tag team like the Revival constantly in quote-unquote Lucha House rule matches, or having a guy pee himself, namely in Drake Maverick, and putting the Universal title on Brock Lesnar, who hasn't wrestled a match on Monday Night Raw since 2002. And there wasn't a single word that Seth said about why Raw sucked. That wasn't true. But you know, it wasn't so much the fact of what he said that stood out to me. It was the fact that, you know, this is the Seth Rollins that we've been wanting to see, that we felt like we haven't really seen since last year when he took on Triple H and basically beat him with one leg at WrestleMania. I mean, for a long while, it started to feel like that the lightning in the bottle for Seth Rollins had fizzled out, and that who knows if it would ever be returned. Because it felt like the Seth Rollins that we saw that was lightning in a bottle was the Seth Rollins who won the WWE title after cashing in his Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. But then went completely just downhill when he got injured and had to forfeit the belt. Now, the whole promo itself to me just came off like the fire was reignited. Like, this felt like the Seth Rollins that can be the top player. The same Seth Rollins that Triple H gave named as the first NXT champion and believed this guy was the future. And you know what? You want another example of how talented Seth Rollins is? He wrestled Baron Corbin later that night in a TLC match and actually made a match with Corbin entertaining. A match with Baron Corbin actually was entertaining. Who thought that would be possible? Seth Rollins' entrance music always has the words, "Burn it down," screamed before it gets to the rest of the entrance. Right now, instead of "burn it down," a promo like that feels like something was, instead of burnt down, lit up. To me, Seth Rollins' promo was the match being struck. And here's hoping that something like that leads to a fuse being lit to something big, and I mean big, in the future for the man known as Seth freaking Rollins. And that is my mic drop of the week. Alright, going from the mic drop to the next topic. Bobby Roode and Chad Gable won the tag team titles. So, I'm kind of on the crossroads on this one because, first off, this is the first title win for Bobby Roode since going to Raw. and the first title win for Chad Gable since American Alpha was split, because they decided to do that god-awful Jason Jordan is Kurt Angle's son angle. However, there were some flaws in that title win. The fact that the announcers didn't really make this seem like a big deal, and how they just seemed to quickly jump to the next segment, that's not something you want to do. A title change happening on a TV show instead of the pay-per-views, you need to make it seem like a big deal. I mean, championships, when they're won on Raw or SmackDown, as opposed to pay-per-view, they need to be treated like breaking news. And when you come back from commercial, remind the people what just happened. Now the issue that I have with this. Now look, Bobby Roode is no stranger to tag team wrestling. Look at Beer Money, look at Team Canada. We know he can do that. The problem is, he can do the singles bit too. When they made him the world champion as the It Factor in TNA, how he was the NXT champion defeating Shinsuke Nakamura. Bobby Roode can go as a singles wrestler. And why WWE just keeps seeming to pushing him back into the tag title picture, I don't know. At some point, I want to see Bobby Roode on his own. And frankly, if you turn him heel, I'm not against that either. We all know Bobby Roode can work well as a heel. As for what this does for the Authors of Pain, I have no idea. Of course, I am hoping for the fact that this may lead to a possible tag title run at some point with the Revival. But for right now, I'm glad that Roode and Gable are being used in some capacity. But all I'm saying is the fact that this is a solution, but not the solution for how you're going to use Bobby Roode properly, and even how you're going to use Chad Gable properly. And no, I'm not saying that Chad Gable is going to be world title caliber or anything like that. Although I do definitely see that for Bobby Roode. But I'm just saying that at some point, this team has been built to split up down the road. When that happens, who knows? But right now, at least it's something for these two. Alright, so, gonna move into the next segment. Like I said, kind of change things up a little bit. So, from here, we go to the feeding frenzy.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Finn Balor was pulled from the Mixed Match Challenge due to illness that he contracted. And now it's being reported he is also being pulled from his match with Drew McIntyre that's set to take place tomorrow at TLC. But going back to the Mixed Match Challenge, I've seriously lost count how many times we've seen a substitution take place, because now Apollo Crews seems to have taken the place for Finn Balor. And the Mixed Match Challenge, it serves no real purpose. And at least last year, you could say it was for charity. But there's really no purpose to this whole competition at all. It's an exhibition. To me, it's kind of like when I was watching the XFL the first time. I realized it was football. It was just bad exhibition football. Now, not all competitions that were generated on the WWE Network are bad. The Mae Young Classic serves a purpose. The Cruiserweight Classic, when they did that, served a purpose. Given they haven't done another Cruiserweight Classic because they got 205 Live, but it still had a purpose to it, to crown a new Cruiserweight champion. The Mae Young Classic. There is something at stake for the women that compete in this. A contract, or even a title shot, or both. So there's a purpose in there. There's an end game. Even, given this is just a style of match, but the Money in the Bank. Those matches serve a purpose. What's at stake in the mixed match challenge? Number 30 in the Royal Rumble for the men and the women? Sorry, it's not good enough. And the other thing that I think is annoying with this is that most of the pairings, they didn't do anything different this time around. Vary it up. Shake things up a little bit with it. Don't have the same pairings that we got the last year. You keep doing that, and you're going to wonder why people aren't tuning into it and why the viewership for it is down. So, at this point, the best tip I could give you for the Mixed Match Challenge, just don't even have one next year. And that, people, is the Feeding Frenzy. Alright, so next topic. This almost made my mic drop of the week, but it's still something that's worth discussing, and that's we saw Mustafa Ali not only debut on SmackDown Live, he actually took on and even did a promo with the current WWE champion, the new Daniel Bryan. And from what I saw, the promo segment was as excellent as the match was. I mean, who better for Mustafa Ali to go against on his first SmackDown match than Daniel Bryan? I mean, the reaction he got backstage, a lot of guys showing respect to him, that had to be incredible for him after that match. I mean, you're on 205 Live and then you're on the main roster and getting so much positive reactions for that match you had with the present champion. I mean, I will say this for 205 Live is that two guys that I feel could make it on the main roster. I mean, maybe one more than the other, but Mustafa Ali is one, and the former champion Cedric Alexander is the other. But the fact that not only he debuted on the main roster and took on the current champion and was able to go toe-to-toe with him, both on the mic and in the ring, and just the fact that the match looked the way that it did was just phenomenal. And just other wrestlers in the locker room couldn't be the only ones that were pleased with it. Because the way I see it, the brass in the WWE had to be happy with what they saw with Mustafa Ali. And right now, here's hoping for big things on the horizon for Mustafa Ali, because he's young, he's athletic, and he's got a tremendous amount of skill. And WWE, in my opinion, would be foolish to not do anything with him. And with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right after this, so people, don't go anywhere.
This is Brian H. Waters, co-host of The Wrestling Realm and the host of Break It Down with Brian H. You're listening to The Shark Attack with Sean Williams.
And we are back. That's, of course, my good friend Brian H. Waters. Check out his show Break It Down with Brian H., which is featured on Podbean, SoundCloud, and Spotify and iTunes. And, of course, you'll also check out The Wrestling Realm with him and the real Dwayne Allen. I've been friends with those guys for quite a while, and honestly, I mean, I have some of the best discussions about wrestling with both those fine gentlemen. All right, so that being said, moving on to the next segment, which is where I ask the question, who writes this crap?
Who's in charge over there? This is aggravating me now. What, I can't count on you people?
Those of you that know me know how I feel about cheap heat. The one that takes jabs at real life stuff. Like when Randy Orton said to Rey Mysterio that Eddie Guerrero is not in heaven, he's in the other place. Or like, well, probably the worst example, or one of the worst examples I can think of that WWE has done, was when Paige made the reference about Reed Flair during her feud with Charlotte. And even Ric Flair said he didn't like it. From what I heard, Paige didn't like it either. And frankly, that was the one time where I felt WWE was truly crossing the line. But lately in this Ruby Riott versus Natalya Neidhart feud, we've seen Ruby Riott break, allegedly, the sunglasses that belonged to the late Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And then this past week, Ruby Riott, for their tables match, put one of those fathead decals of Jim the Anvil Neidhart on a table and saying that she'll put Natalya through it and make her even closer to her father than ever. When does this crap stop? I mean, enough with making a buck or poking fun at things like the passing of a loved one. I mean, like I said, in the examples, the passing of Jim Neidhart, Roman Reigns' leukemia, Jerry Lawler's dead mother, allegedly breaking the Anvil's glasses, taking jabs at Reid Flair's death, the urn that allegedly contained Paul Bearer's ashes, or saying things like Eddie Guerrero isn't in heaven, and the list goes on. It's a cheap tactic, and it's in bad taste, and frankly, I think Ruby Riott is doing a good enough job already as a heel to where she doesn't need this crap. And drawing enough heat is not what's holding Ruby Riott back from being a top contender. You want to know what is holding her back? I'll give you two examples of what's holding her back. Liv Morgan and Sarah Logan. And why do I say those two? Look, Liv has potential, but she's still on the green side, and Sarah Logan, the fact that you skipped her all the way past NXT to be on the main roster, that already spells disaster for her. Yeah, like I said, I mean, Liv, I think there's potential there. But Sarah, she's so green she might as well be a traffic light directing traffic to go. And honestly, Natalya has gone through enough over the fact that her dad's passed away. So, I've never been a fan of this. I'm never going to be a fan of this. And I just feel like what should be a good rivalry between these two, it's cheap heat like this that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And yeah, I'm sure Natalya gave the okay. I'm sure she gave the okay, but it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem right. And I mean, shout out to my good friend Brian H. Waters saying wrestling's cut from a different cloth. I get it. I get all that. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I have to like it. And that is who writes this crap. I'm going to sidestep from WWE a little bit and talk about Final Battle, which took place on Friday night. So Kelly Klein is now the new Women of Honor champion, and Jeff Cobb was able to retain the World Television title, and Jay Lethal defeated Cody Rhodes to retain the ROH World title. Now, a couple other things that did happen. Flip Gordon was able to defeat Bully Ray in the I Quit match, and also Marty Scurll, the villain, was able to remain as number one contender for the World Heavyweight title, defeating Christopher Daniels. But, of course, there was Ladder War, which was every bit as brutal as it gets. As we saw the Briscoes, Jay and Mark Briscoe, them boys from Sandy Fork, once again, Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions, which, if memory serves, I believe this is the 10th title reign as Tag Team Champions for Jay and Mark. My buddy JP, who also co-hosts with me on this show, he said, when I asked the question, where do the Briscoe brothers rank in terms of the tag team scene on the indie circuit? And he named them as number one. It's hard to disagree with that. I mean, the Briscoes just are so balanced in the fact that They can be agile. They can be brawlers. They can just hit with brute force, and they can talk. Oh boy, can they talk. But I don't think there's ever been a finer tag team in Ring of Honor or probably in the indie circuit than the Briscoes. And as far as, and also should be noted that Marty Scurll made his presence known with with Jay Lethal over the Ring of Honor World title. But he's not the only one that's eyeballing that title. The NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis, a.k.a. Magnus, he made his presence known and apparently would love a shot at that Ring of Honor gold. You gotta love this kind of stuff. I just feel like, and this is something I've said numerous times, that in the indie circuit, there's just more freedom in what you're able to do creatively. Alright, so from that being said, next topic. Well, this is a little bit on the somber side. So, the Dynamite Kid and Larry the Axe Henning, unfortunately, are two greats in wrestling who are no longer with us. And, you know, for the Henning family, it is kind of heartbreaking that Larry outlived his son, Kurt Henning, a.k.a. Mr. Perfect. I don't think there's a greater nightmare that can ever happen for a parent than to having to bury their child. But thoughts and prayers definitely go out to the Henning family, especially current superstar in WWE, Curtis Axel, and of course to the family of the Dynamite Kid. Now, I was listening to Break It Down, and my boy Brian H. Waters was talking about the Dynamite Kid, and, well, also a debate he had about Davey Boy Smith, and whether or not he's a Hall of Famer, which Brian and I seem to share the same opinion about Davey Boy Smith. And as far as the Dynamite Kid goes, as legendary as he was, I just don't know if I see the Dynamite Kid going into the WWE Hall of Fame unless it's part of the British Bulldogs tag team. I don't know. It's just my thought on that one. But, I mean, the Dynamite Kid, unfortunately, he had been battling a lot of health issues over the last several years of his life. The first time, and probably the only time I ever watched the British Bulldogs tag team, was when I watched the Coliseum video of SummerSlam 1988, and the opening match was the British Bulldogs and the Rougeaus. And the Dynamite Kid at that time, he was already hurting and couldn't really do everything that he was able to do. So that kind of hindered things a little bit. And the match ended in a draw. Not exactly a great showing when you're watching that for the first time. And next topic I wanted to talk about is Nia Jax versus Ronda Rousey. Seriously, if there's not going to be a physical confrontation between Ronda and Nia, don't bother. And you know, after all this time, Nia Jax still can't cut a promo. And frankly, I'm almost surprised with the promo she did on Raw that she didn't say at one point, "Nia, smash!" Then again, I guess Nia didn't want to fight with Ronda at that time because her hand is still hurt. No, not for sucker punching Becky Lynch that one Monday Night Raw, but she injured it from patting herself on the back. I mean, the best example of a bigger female wrestler of the last 2 decades that I can think of has been Awesome Kong. But you know what the difference between Nia Jax and Awesome Kong is? Kong didn't injure the other wrestlers, much less injure them and then brag about it. And, you know, the whole, "do you know who my cousin is" card will only work for so long for Nia Jax. And here's a news flash also. Memo to Nia Jax. Your cousin didn't injure the people he worked with either, and if he did, he didn't take pride in doing so. But then again, in the case of Nia Jax, much like her mic skills, I guess professionalism skipped her generation. Alright, so I didn't want to do Who Writes This Crap about Raw being bad because, frankly, that was getting repetitive and you could only talk bad about Raw for so long. And really, that was just something that I felt I couldn't, that's just something that you tend to get a little weary of talking about at some point. But I will do it for this segment. So the last 3 weeks with Raw, let's just face it, it has been to say it's been way below average quality, that would be an understatement. In fact, it sets a whole new standard for what a poor quality wrestling show looks like. TNA doesn't look near this bad with their shows, and they've been forced due to financials to film all their Impact shows not only at only one location, but also outside of the United States, specifically in Canada. Now, I'm not going to go on and on and on about how much Raw continues to suck and where the blame goes to, because frankly, I'd be wasting my time, and if most of you are at all like me, you're sick of having to constantly say how bad Monday Night Raw has been. And you know, while it wasn't good, it wasn't near as bad this past Monday. But when the ratings are at a historical, even a more historic of a low, and you had that strong promo and your main event was a TLC match, and it still didn't draw, you got a problem. But you know, here's the other issue that I have with this past Raw, and that's with TLC looming around the corner. WWE forgot the key purpose for the go-home show was to sell the pay-per-view, or at least, in the case of Monday Night Raw, sell their end of the pay-per-view. Did Braun Strowman ever show up? Nope. Was there any talk about any of the matches taking place for Raw on the pay-per-view besides Corbin gloating about how he's going to be the general manager for a long time, whether we like it or not, or the whole thing with Ruby Riott and Natalya? Not that I saw. The go-home shows, and frankly the shows between pay-per-views, were always meant to make the pay-per-views feel more important than what we see on regular TV. But lately, how is it any better than what we get for 3 hours on Monday Night Raw? I don't know about you, but I don't see any difference other than the fact that you have SmackDown in the mix, but so what? Do you really think that adding SmackDown into the mix makes a difference? All it really does is look like the old Raw SmackDown Super shows that we used to get that really, in plain English, was just their way to end the brand extensions. Which, of course, they eventually just did it all over again anyway. And with the exception of AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan, or whether or not Braun Strowman shows up for the match with Corbin on Sunday, how excited are you feeling for any of the matches taking place? There used to be a time where tables, ladders, and chairs used to mean something to wrestling fans, and it wasn't when it had a pay-per-view named after it. It was when you didn't get the matches a lot, and when you heard the name TLC match, it meant that something was going to happen, and we were going to all see all-out warfare between those involved. But unfortunately, the concept of TLC, just like the concept of Hell in a Cell, has become diluted. And I swear to you, this is not how it used to be, and I'm fairly certain this is not what those who came up with those concepts of matches ever thought it would become. But the point of gimmick matches like that is to enhance the product, but that product itself is diluted. There's no feuds to enhance, no stories that grab us and leave us wanting to see unfold. And WWE has become diluted over the fact that they're so busy trying to please the shareholders, they forgot about the resource they had that got them to where they are now. The consumers, the paying customers, the ones who buy the tickets, subscribe to the network, and buy the merchandise. But the only thing that WWE seems to follow nowadays is shareholders and social media. And social media, as of late, has made their voices heard, and it's led WWE to make changes, some but not a lot. This Monday, they're saying Vince McMahon is going to show up on Raw to shake things up. It'd be funny if it wasn't so sad for the fact that you have to have him show up to actually fix things or try and draw ratings. And I'm not saying though, in fact, and you know what? I'm not saying to those in social media to stop or that it's not working, because their voices have been loud enough to make WWE take notice. The only thing I'm saying to social media, you made your voices loud, turn the volume up. But you know, here, the other thing I gotta say about this is, and there's so many more details for this, is that the third hour was so bad that it actually hit a 2.0 in the ratings. That hasn't happened since the days when WCW Nitro was kicking their asses. And you know, the problem is not so much on Baron Corbin being the general manager as it is that what he does as the GM has become stale and predictable. The constant changing of rules and backing out of matches. And you know, with going this route, nobody's getting elevated and talent is being wasted. And you know, WWE can't afford to have things like this with Roman gone and Braun injured and Brock being too much of a lazy SOB to show up and actually work an actual work schedule. I mean, this week's SmackDown seemed to be the only one that did a good job of selling the product enough to make you consider watching TLC. I mean, Raw has basically been the heels running the show, constant audibles to matches, and a little guy urinating every week. And you know, Nitro may have sucked when they went 3 hours, and the stories were bad and matches felt like it was on repeat, but at least they had stories and those matches and some kind of substance and structure. Right now what we're seeing with Monday Night Raw is no substance and no structure. And the end result is absolutely zero excitement on anything going on for the TLC pay-per-view. And with that being said, we're going to wrap things up tonight. I want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe to me on iTunes. Check me out on Podbean and on YouTube. Of course, join my Facebook group, The Shark Attack. And with that being said, next time we'll be talking about TLC, what happened when Vince did show up, and a whole lot more. Till then, this has been The Shark Attack. I am Sean Williams, and I'm out of here.
He was born perfect. And just like the great white shark, this guy has never had to evolve.